Welcome to the Abundant Life Family Podcast. We're helping to build families that last. My name's Bill.
And I'm Jen.
We're the Hildebrands. And today we're walking through our mile markers on mile marker number 8 as we look at pre-marriage and marriage. We have a couple families. One is a staff family and one volunteers to work with marriage ministry. And so we're really excited to have the Clarks and the Writings with us today. Well, again, we're excited to have with us today Jonathan and Sydney. Tell us about yourselves.
Yeah, so I'm Jonathan. This is my wife, obviously Sydney. I'm a young adult pastor here at Abundant Life. She can share a little bit more in detail, but we recently moved down here from Chicago about 7 months ago. And before that, we were doing a lot of different things. I was working at a tech company. Our life looked totally different. And so now we're down here with you guys in Kansas City, enjoying ourselves, enjoying the weather, enjoying winning football teams and such. And so, that's a little bit about us. We got 2 kids, Eden and Levi. They're 4 and 2. They're a blast, but they're also a lot of work. And so we're like navigating transition, all that stuff. Both of our families are in Chicago, so we're figuring it out.
Look forward to hearing more from you guys, but also I want to introduce Scott and Lori. Tell us about yourselves.
Well, we just celebrated 7 years of marriage last May, and we have 4 kids, and 2 of them are married. One of them is actually going to be proposing next week over in Europe.
That she doesn't see the podcast today.
Yeah, no.
You said in Europe.
In France.
Okay.
So yes, that part of Europe.
That
he's over there doing an internship with this law program.
Okay.
So we should hear something next week about that.
That's exciting.
And one still at home. He just turned 20. And we also have a granddaughter, Lexi, and another one on the way.
Oh, wow.
So we're excited about that stage too.
So you're covering this whole stage, pre-marriage and marriage, but you guys help out with pre-marriage and marriage, really, in your age group, the people that you pastor. So tell us about how that looks. How do you pastor those?
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges, and you can speak into this too, I think one of the challenges is we're not like super far ahead. I mean, on the couch, we're sitting well behind you guys in terms of ministry experience.
Hey, watch that.
Sorry, marriage.
Well behind.
Yeah, well behind, that's right. But marriage experience, we just don't we're not walking around with like a whole bag of we have 6 years under our belt, which isn't nothing for sure. And I think some of the changes that we've made, it feels like we're express version, but it's not nearly as much. I think one of the challenges we have is having the ability to speak into marriages that we're still trying to figure it out ourselves. And so I think the challenge in our context, we lead a ministry, it's 18 to 35 year olds. That's a pretty large gap. And that's a lot of leading peers and such. And so the worst thing we could do is think we had it all figured out. And so I think we lean into resources. We lean into a lot of things that help us. Just it's kind of just like taking a step first. We don't really know what's coming, but we do know where we want to go, and we just are trying to be faithful with what the Lord's given us and stewarding what He's given us. But by no means do we have it figured out. I think we're still trying to figure it out. But the context, that's
we all are still trying to figure out. Let me tell you that.
In fact, you guys are very qualified because I see in you guys, I mean, one of the biggest qualities that you're looking for in somebody that's going to disciple somebody else, number one, do you love God? Do you love God's Word? Do you love the people that you're working with? And I see that in you guys.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Thank you. Yeah,
I appreciate that.
Well, very cool. You work primarily with a ministry called Paradigm. What does that look like?
Yeah, so Paradigm is a really cool ministry. It's seen a lot of favor from God in terms of just the amount of young adults. I mean, honestly, when I was just out of college, I wasn't going to a weekly gathering every Tuesday night with a bunch of hundreds of other young adults. And so it is really cool to see how Paradigm, the ministry, what it is just practically it's a gathering of young adults on a Tuesday night to have a worship service, to hear a live message, and really just engage in community with each other. It's just a mechanism for doing that. And it's called Paradigm because when you get out of college, you have to look at the world a certain way, and it's a paradigm shift to think of it in the way that God calls us to see it. It's a lens. It's changing our perspective. It's changing how we're going about what we're going to do and how we're going to take on the next portion of our life. that paradigm shift after you get out of college is so significant. I love the young adult ministry because they're in that like sweet season of figuring out, well, what am I going to spend my life doing? And I think, man, what an awesome opportunity to sit in the gap with them and work through some of that. And the gap is primarily when it comes to marriage too. All of them are like trying to figure out that lane too, and so helping them through that, I feel like is just a blast.
Let's say somebody's watching this and they're driving down the road or they're mowing their grass, washing dishes, whatever, and they realize, I don't live anywhere near Lee Summit. This sounds like a great thing. I'd love to get involved with it, or I'd love to encourage my kids to get involved with it. Can you do this online?
Totally. So we stream every service that we have on a Tuesday night. We live stream to our online community. We have a good enough following on online as well. We have 2 locations that we have started, both in the Crossroads campus and in Lee Summit. So you're not at Lee Summit, but you're in the broader Kansas City area. There's 2 locations for you. But beyond that, we're streaming all over the place. I know my mom is watching from Chicago.
Yay, Mom!
So thanks, Mom. I appreciate that.
Can you build community from
Absolutely.
online?
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities. Kyle Worsham, our online pastor, does a great job of engaging a community online. We have a lot of resources to be able to do that and fall into community in that way. So
Scott and Lori's son, who lives in France, or soon-to-be daughter-in-law, who lives in Uganda,
for the summer.
They
That's
could
where
do
they're-
this.
they could. They might need to, go in at a weird time. I don't know, middle of the night. I don't know what the time difference is.
Wake up to watch it.
Exactly.
They stay live, but then it's on, YouTube and all that stuff to watch afterwards too, to engage with. So
Another thing, if I'm a student or just out of college, you guys were out of college when you got married, right? Okay. Did you meet in college?
Yes, we did. Yeah. We both went to Eton College, which is a suburb right outside of Chicago.
Okay.
Small Christian school. We both majored in the same major, business. We both played college soccer, so we kind of met because we both played soccer, both the same age, and we just dated through college and then got married about a year after college. So we did a little bit of the Chicago living. We both worked in the city, did the business thing, and then we got married.
Wow. Well, some of these people that are watching will be thinking, I or my kid is 24, 28, 32, whatever, living in my basement still. No. How do you meet the right person? I mean, what should you be, any insights that you can give?
whether it's like right when you're in college, right when you get out of college, or even after that, I think that like to know that like the Lord is leading your steps. Sometimes you just feel like you're doing it wrong because you're not keeping up with the Joneses, and I think that that is like really toxic to start to think about. Well, I have to find someone. Well, maybe you don't have to find someone right now. I think God uses all the seasons, even well after college, to start to grow in you and solidify, and strengthen you and honestly sanctify you a little bit. And so we have the story of like meeting in college and then getting married. But honestly, there's a lot of challenges that have come with that too. We've had to learn how to like figure out what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. We both had no idea that we were going into ministry. Had we gotten married at 26, she probably would have been marrying someone that knew that we were going into ministry. I have no idea. Yeah. And so there's some things that we've had to work through that are like pain points that like, because we got married when we did and we were younger, in theory, what we had to work through together just became a little bit more, it was just less obvious. And so we were like, I didn't know I was signing up for this, or, I always get weary of people who are like, I need to get married, I need to find someone. And I work in a ministry that is what, we're drawing. It's just a lot of people I need to find someone. And that can be pretty tough. So we try to man, God has a plan for like that. But your question was, man, what are you looking for? Yeah. I would say we were talking about this last night as we were thinking about, man, well, what guidance would we give a young adult couple or a single? And what we'd like to distill it down to was humility and wisdom. I think both of those. The humility is walking in a space where you're like, man, I'm willing to change. Not only am I willing to change, but I'm willing to let the other person change. Sydney's done that so well. When we first got married, we had no idea that we would be in ministry. No idea that we would run that lane at all. Like I had no dreams of going back to school, none of that. And then over the course of like a year and a half, 2 years, things shifted, and the Lord was really speaking to me, telling me we needed to go do something totally different. And so Sydney had, of course, the humility to start to, our life is going to look totally different than we thought. I thought we were going to work in a corporate setting, which is financially a different world. That's just in every regard, it's pretty much very different than what we're doing today.
Right.
Wow.
And so that's the humility, and then the wisdom piece. I think that just to see that wisdom is growing in a person, I think that that's invaluable. I think it's in James 3. I want to say, I could get this exact, but I don't know. But wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. And that path in peace is sown by those who walk in peace. And if you're like tethering your ship up to someone else's, or becoming one flesh with someone else's, to know that they have humility and then they're also walking in wisdom, both of those together, you just can't go wrong. I mean, the ability open to reason, all that stuff, like, my goodness. And so there's a lot of other stuff that I think you could add to that, but there's some that you just like, man, there's a lot of things that change between Sydney and I on a daily basis. So if I got married to her for other reasons, I'm having to shift.
I like to say we've only been married for 6 years, but I've been married to about 3 different Johns. And so I think with thinking about someone who has wisdom or is pursuing wisdom daily, and someone who, what was the other one?
Humility.
Yeah, who has humility. I think like the willingness to be sanctified through marriage. And even when you wake up and realize my husband wants to go into ministry, and I had no plan for that in my life, and I saw this life of, just same thing, security, for your ability to humble yourself, put on your selfless glasses, think of him, and walk in wisdom, seeking the wisdom of God. I think that those are 2 very, very important things to put at the forefront of your marriage.
That is so good. And as a parent, one of the things I have asked all of our kids that have gotten married and countless kids that have been in our home is, what are the characteristics that you want to live with for the rest of your life? And that just answered that question, because there's sometimes when people are confused, they're not sure, and they want to change the other person. And so the question becomes, are you willing to live with that characteristic for the rest of your life? Because you're not supposed to change them. They can change themselves, God can change them, but you can't change them, nor should you want to. So if you want to, might be time to cut your losses and run. It may not be the characteristic you want to live with for the rest of your life.
Have you had to see somebody do that? I mean, recently, I know that you have walked with 5 different couples through this. Out of the 5?
Yeah, there was 5 couples last fall that we got to walk through the merge.
You were doing the pre-marriage.
Pre-marriage. Okay.
Yeah, with the 5 couples, I always love to say there was one that had been in dating 3 months, and they were trying to determine what direction they're going in life. One had been dating 3 years, trying to decide what direction they were going to go with life, and 3 of them were engaged. And at the end of it, the 2 that had been dating became engaged, and one that was engaged broke up. They determined through the conversations that they had in the premarital course that they were taking, this wasn't what God wanted for them for the rest of their lives.
Wow.
Again, it's that intentionality.
Totally.
Like they were thinking ahead, planning ahead, thinking, okay, we need to have these conversations about, all the things that are presented, and coming to a conclusion together is so good and so powerful. Yeah, that's great.
Personal story with that, it's so funny. So our son that's in France is getting ready to propose to his girlfriend. And he was talking about they've had to do a little wedding planning because the wedding's coming pretty quickly. So they're doing a little wedding planning before the ring's even on the finger. But he said, I didn't sign on to be the one excited about what colors are in the wedding or where the wedding's going to be, but that's not her thing at all. And he does care about it. So he is the one that's having to do that. So I said to him, that's great that you found that out, because guess what? She may not be into birthdays like our family was into birthdays. She may not be into Christmas traditions the way our family was into Christmas traditions. You guys need to have those conversations now.
What drew you into helping people with marriage?
Lori and I, we've been married before, right? We had different situations that brought us to the point of getting remarried. And so we've had a passion for, wanting to have a solid marriage and knowing, as we were dating, so to speak, before we got married, I think the number one thing that we really valued and understood is Jesus has to be the focus. He only he can fulfill the deepest needs. She'll never be able to fulfill that. I can't fulfill certain needs.
That's right.
That's the thing, I think,
Realistic expectations.
going back to, along with wisdom and humility, where are they in their faith walk? So that's what we've been teaching each of our kids. And so making sure when you're in that season of singleness, are you walking with God? So he is, your fulfillment. So when you bring that into the marriage, you're not putting undue expectations on your spouse.
Yeah. I prayed a prayer, and it took me a while to get there. I was 4 years single, came out of a very destructive marriage. And so coming out of that, I needed time to heal and get my life back on track. But I had gotten to the place at the end of that 4 years where I began to pray, God, if I'm going to be better with somebody than without, to complete the work that you have planned for me to complete here on this earth, then you bring them. If not, I am content. And that took a lot to get there. But I was content in that place. And then he introduces me to Scott.
I remember when we were like your age and fairly new in marriage, and we just had our first son. And honestly, we were struggling. Bill was in full-time ministry. Our firstborn was premature, and I just felt a little abandoned and feeling like, why is Bill not, fulfilling all of my needs? Can he not see that I'm hurting and I've got this baby? And a very wise lady told me, can you hold this for me, babe? This very wise mentor told me, she said, Jennifer, Bill cannot fulfill and be all that you need him to be. And so you have to continue, think of the triangle, you on this side, Bill on this side, God on the top. As you pursue God, it will bring you and Bill together. And you have to find your fulfillment, and everything you need is in Jesus. And as you pursue hard after him, it'll work out. And I'm so thankful for Bill because, he's pursuing God with me. And, during that really honestly difficult time, we were able to, come back together. And it was through intentionality and humility and me saying, there's some things I need to work on within myself. And I'm so thankful that Jesus is right there with me. So,
And Jen, that's a great concept we teach in the marriage ministry that we do. The hoop, the hula hoop. You can work on everybody inside the hoop, and that hoop is just you, right? You have to work on just you. And so I'm not concentrating on what Scott might need to fix. I'm concentrating on what I need to fix. And that changes my lens towards Scott.
And so that hula hoop, you set it on the floor and stand in it? Is that what you're saying?
Or if we're in group and somebody starts talking, like you decide to share about Jen, we'll just throw the hoop over you.
Oh, okay.
Just to remind you.
Stay in your hoop.
That's so good.
Now, I wish we would have had somebody like you guys when we were preparing for marriage, when we were first married. We kind of thought, we can do this. We can pull it up by our bootstraps. We were in ministry. Doggone, if we can't figure this out, who can, right? But
it was rough.
We had, looking back now especially, we didn't realize how rough it was at the time. But we had some real rough times. So what are some keys that you might give to people?
I think going back to that, I think in business or whatever you do, when you're pursuing that, a lot of times, like in my profession in the physical therapy realm, you do clinicals, right? To see, obviously what it's like to be exposed to it, to practice. But you're seeing people that have, that are teaching you, that are seasoned as therapists. So it's learning to be around people that have been down that path before. So in marriage, right? One of the things is get around couples that have been married for a while and ask them questions, what have they learned? What are some things that that would be important for us to know? So I think that's just a good tip to take in.
And realize that you may not be that person for your kids, right? So we're supposed to stop teaching them and wait for them to ask us questions. And sometimes we'd be waiting until we're old and gray. Time for them to ask us questions. We have those kids that are going to be, we can do it, right? Pull ourselves up by the bootstrap. We can do this. But then we have kids, we've out of 4 of them, they each have distinct personalities. And one of them is just like a little sponge. He wants to know, they're the couple that's going through merge to get engaged. And we happened to be talking about what we were learning in the marriage curriculum that we're working on communication. And he was listening and he's like, oh, there's hope. That's so sweet to hear that we can get where you guys are. You know, we're only 7 years down the road in when we've been married, and we've had to unlearn 22 years of marriage and 22 years of marriage to different or 23, I'm sorry, years of marriage to different people. So you have to unlearn some of those habits, and it brings a different challenge in some ways to your marriage.
So did that go really smoothly when you were first getting rid of, you know, some of the bad habits? How did that look for you guys?
We've got a good story on that one.
We just finished communication chapter, right?
Yes.
And you know, you read. I mean, communication is the key to any successful relationship. And so, communication is just learning that it's strictly just mutual understanding. So to understand your partner without all these other filters that you may have brought into your old communication styles.
So when you argue, like my habit.
We don't argue.
No, I know, no couple, no Jesus couple argues,
No,
right?
I'm leaning in, I'm listening.
So when we would have an argument or a disagreement, the very first time that we had one, it's always late at night, right? Right before you're going to go to bed. That's where it is. And so I stepped out of the bedroom and went into the bathroom, and I got on my knees because my habit is, okay, God, if this is my reaction here, what's going on here? What do I need to get straight with God so I can come back to Scott and talk with him? But I didn't let Scott know that was my habit. I just left the room, and all he saw was me leaving the room. So what he brought to the marriage was old habits. Oh, she's mad, she's walking away. And so when I came back, I turned on the light, I sat down on the bed and I said, can we talk? And he's got, he's rolled over facing the wall, and he looks at me and he's like, talk? Like, we're going to talk about it now? And I'm like, well, yeah, I just had to go get right with God so I could come back and talk with you.
Wish you'd have told me that before.
That would have been good to know.
I might have been working on that too.
So communication isn't all up here. It needs to come out.
Oh, that's good.
But it's opportunity. I think learning that during those moments, afterwards, those are opportunities to, okay, how can we improve that situation? Learning to say to look at disagreements, and which is going to happen, right? We're two broken people trying to make it work. So learning to embrace that versus, not to avoid it. I think that's one of the patterns I brought in was that avoidance, and that's not healthy.
We've been married for 32 years, and we've had lots of conversations. And I haven't been the one probably to go into my bathroom and get on my knees, and pray and ask Jesus. We have a lot of years of not handling that with humility and wisdom. We have, we've had to deal with, I tend to escalate arguments because that's what I grew up with. My parents were yellers. I'm a yeller. I've been known to throw a few things, and I'm not, like the Lord is working on me with that. And so what we have found is, as we've been learning how to communicate well, to be humble, a big piece for Bill and I that we're really working through now in 32 years is we have to forgive one another. Yeah. I mean, there's some, we can say we've been in ministry, we've been missionaries and worked with students, and like sit here and be like, oh yeah, we have, we have to really work on things and communicate. And I have to be willing to share with Bill the things where he's hurt me. And I have to forgive him for that. And it goes both ways. And it has been, honestly, it's challenging. But I feel like at where we are in our stage, it is a lot about forgiveness and being able to look back and say, wow. And again, it's put that hula hoop back over me and recognize where I've hurt Bill and the same, and then be willing to forgive. It's a huge piece. Yeah. It's huge for us.
Scott and I were playing around the other day as we were thinking about the lesson to talk about, and we were talking about forgiveness. And I had a shoebox sitting on the counter, and I said, it's almost like you have something that hangs around your neck, that shoebox, right? And I try to get close to Scott, but there's something between us. No matter where I go, that's hanging around my neck until we learn to say, hey, what you said hurt me, And I just need to let you know that. If I got mad at you, I need to say I'm sorry for that. And then he has the opportunity to know, not try to read my mind like we women want them to do, right? But he has the opportunity then to go, okay, I'm aware that I hurt her. I'm sorry, forgive me. That box comes off and you can get closer. There's nothing between you then.
And what that does, that's one more step of being more and more unified. That oneness that you talk about, that becomes even deeper. And that's a lifelong becoming more and more unified. That's like being more and more sanctified.
That go to my bedroom or go to the bathroom and get on my knees, that's not me. I'm not that righteous. That is Gary Smalley. I went to a conference years ago. He's good. You learn.
But let's just lean into real quick about that. I'm so thankful, Jonathan and, Scott, you are, and my husband, you're godly. You really do desire. How would you encourage a husband, a wife, where they can't be, it's not really safe to just say you've hurt me or vice versa. Like that's our reality. What would you share in that if there's somebody out there and they're like, he hurts me or she hurts me emotionally or physically, what would you say to them?
Yeah, well, I can go for, I mean, the physical piece, the hurt physical piece, I mean, that's a little bit more serious. And that one, I think that you need to go get help. And so that's the local authority, whatever that looks like for you. If someone's hurting you physically, that you need to go get help. Yeah. And that going to authorities, going to the church, whatever it is, go to someone and get help. Widen the circle.
You need support in that area.
And you need to be told, we need to let them know this is not what is intended for marriage. Yeah. You shouldn't think that this is normal. Yeah. You shouldn't expect that this is what life should be. Yeah. This is not right, and you can and have permission to go get help.
And marriage is, we've talked about this earlier, but marriage, not here, but previously, we've talked about marriage being this like one flesh deal. And for that to come apart, that's a pretty gross surgery where you're literally pulling a body part off or reaching in and pulling out the appendix. That's what that looks like. And so to come apart is to literally to take something that was one and make it two, which is, I'm not into that bloody environment. And so, but it's gross. So treading those grounds and knowing what lanes you need to run in. If you're going to go get an amputation, well, there's things that you do first. The amputation is like the last case scenario. The first thing you do is go to the doctor. You're just widening the circle. You're getting more help. You're like getting more people in the circle to know what's going on. I don't know if I'm thinking about this right. That's why community is so important. But then it gets, we'll say that's not, I don't know, this isn't working well for me and I'm not sure what to do. Well, then the second deal is you have to be willing to walk on, if it's your foot, you need to walk on crutches for a while. You need to be willing to go around and make sure that you're doing everything you can to make sure that you are playing your part. That's probably two. And number three, it's not a sin to take space. And sometimes I think people are like, oh no, I just have to figure it out that night because I'm not allowed to go to bed on my anger type thing. That's one thing, but to have a place in your relationship, in your marriage where you're trying to figure out, okay, now we are clearly not seeing each other. Sometimes it's appropriate just to, hey, I love you, I see you, but I need space to think through and process. I take more time to process than Sydney does, and so I will think and think and think. I'm like, why is this bothering me so much? It's really important for me to get to the bottom of it before I ever find horizontal unity. And so that's what I would say. I think that we've have been learning some of that. But the pain is really hard.
Several times you said widen the circle, and I like that because we shouldn't walk through anything alone, period. God made us to be in community, and sometimes we need help from outside ourselves to walk through something difficult.
And we keep it hidden, we keep it secret. There is no opportunity for help. And let me tell you, we got lots in this world that's against us, and they want, to tear those marriages apart. I lived in an abusive marriage for 22 years. And so when you're a Christian, God hates divorce, right? And so you hear that, you do everything that you can to do your part. You can't control somebody else. You can't change them. You can only change yourself in that. So allowing, and I've had to walk through a lot of that. Every time you hear a message being given on God hates divorce, you're like, God hates me. I went through divorce. So you have to justify that. You have to kind of figure that part of it out just a little bit. And but what I would say to somebody who is walking through physical abuse, mine was emotional and verbal, what I would say to them is, you need the physical space. And you have every right, with help. I'd go to a counselor. You need to go. You need somebody that can give you tools to help you walk through this well. And you need the physical space for your safety, your kids' safety. The emotional and verbal can be the same. It can be as damaging as the physical. So again, you need help. You need somebody else smarter than you that can give you the tools to help you walk through this. Ideally, God would love to have that marriage reconciled, but it takes two willing to change themselves for that to happen. So there are circumstances where you may live apart, or it may lead to, once that marriage vow has been broken, in my case, there was infidelity, and once it was broken, I had tough choices to make in that. And so I think, coming from that lens, I would say you've got to give our Christian brothers and sisters permission to know that God doesn't want abuse. God doesn't want verbal, emotional, mental, physical abuse. And so it's okay to seek help for that. Just because you're a Christian, you don't pull yourself up by your bootstraps and walk through that. But you need somebody else that can help you walk through that.
So good. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
That was powerful. Thank you.
You guys have all brought some great wisdom today, and I appreciate that. Getting to hear your own stories just briefly, but I know that there's a depth of wisdom that you guys continue to have and could share. But we have tons of resources also listed on this page, and most of us have learned the things that we gathered and shared today from other resources, to be honest. There's a lot of resources that people can look up, as well as reaching out to us, so we would be glad to be a part of that. But the biggest thing is, be slow to enter into marriage, as people walk that road and they're excited, this could be the one, walk in with both eyes open, but then continue in marriage with one eye closed, be willing to forgive and
Exactly. Grace.
have grace. That's right. Well, let's close with a word of prayer. Lord, I thank you so much for just your blessings of this podcast, this message today. And I just thank you for Jonathan and Sydney, for Scott and Lori, and for my own wife. And I just pray that you would continue to bless our marriages, but I pray that you would especially bless those who have been able to listen today. We love you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Abundant Life Family Podcast. If you found this helpful for your family, hit like and subscribe below. And feel free to drop a comment or question below. To learn more about the Abundant Life Family Ministry and the 10-mile markers to help you win at building families that last, go to our website at livingproof.co/family.